Off your elections and the future. America engages in the second Cold War. Arctic frost investigation reveals shades of the old USSR and the KGB. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business, and the stories just keep rolling in. Off your elections and the future. Across America, we usually refer to the elections for federal office that are not tied to the presidential elections as the off-year elections, the next being 2026. However, there were some important elections this past week in New York City, New Jersey, and Virginia. Here in Houston, there was a crowded field to replace the congressional rep from District 18. I've been the victim of decades of poor representation in Congress here in that 18th district. The last two elected have died in office. The slot has been vacant for 6 months. I don't think anybody noticed. As I anticipated, two who ran on anti-Trump slates will be in the runoff. Neither would be acceptable to me. However, the district has been redrawn for the 2026 election, so maybe the skies will be brighter with a better electorate map a year from now. The New York City race garnered much of the publicity for this election season. An anti-Semitic dirty commie with no management experience was elected. I understand that 30% of the Jewish vote went for him. That makes no sense to me. I call for a total boycott of New York City for the length of his term. No visits, of course, but see who you do business with. If their headquarters are still in New York City after this, cut them off. As they say, elections have consequences. Let's deliver. In Virginia and New Jersey, a low turnout resulted in the election of two losers. My message to taxpayers in both states: many of you stayed home, so you get to enjoy high taxes, high electric bills, and boys and girls bathrooms. Hope you're happy with yourselves for taking the day off instead of voting. Given the excellent job Glenn Youngkin did as governor of Virginia, I'm surprised that the election was for a Democratic slate. This was made worse by Dem Jay Jones being elected Attorney General in Virginia after putting in writing that he wanted a GOP legislator dead and his two children. Who votes for scum like this? For President Trump, I ask you to do full audits to see how many illegals voted in the elections above. Time to crack down. It's also crucial that the GOP take the 2026 elections very seriously. Put guards at polling places. Watch how mail-in ballots are handled. The only good news is that the Dems blew $100 million on those elections in New Jersey and Virginia, supposedly both blue states. I hear they are having trouble raising funds. Maybe that will be the message to the GOP for 2026. Get out there and spend some money. Frankly, despite these election results, I still predict that the GOP victory will be in November of 2026. America will return to nuclear testing. About 18 months ago, I released an article about the fact that the world is already in the second Cold War. I lived through the first Cold War. It started due to the incompetence of American leadership following World War II. It was basically a battle of America and its allies versus the USSR. By 1990, this massive experiment in communism had failed and the USSR had broken up, but not before millions upon millions of people had died. Had American leadership been competent, we would not be in a second Cold War. I refer to the new New York City mayor as a dirty commie. That is what we called the USSR and its allies back then. No need to change the nomenclature today. It's still true. During the first Cold War, it was unthinkable that there would be a commie elected anywhere in this wonderful country. Now we have clowns like Mamdani in several large cities and close to it in a couple governor's mansions. We even have the fake commie Bernie Sanders as a senator. Hopefully these clowns will show their true colors and regional failed experiments will fail again. Over 30 years ago, nuclear testing was stopped by agreement. An agreement between the USA and Russia was reached. The two powers were going to gradually reduce the number of nuclear weapons and hopefully save our planet for future generations. The problem with this idyllic picture is that it was a fraud from the get-go. I never believed Russia would play by the rules. Then you have multiple other countries that are now considered nuclear powers. The elephant in the room is that China has been focusing much of its efforts on a large army and nuclear weapon development. Even the joke country, North Korea, may have starving people, but has been making nuclear weapons. The trigger recently was at the Russian test of a nuclear torpedo. This could change the outlook for ocean warfare in the future. Trump, to his credit, did not take the report laying down. He has announced that America will resume testing nuclear weapons again. I endorse this step. Further, we need to make sure that the USA and its allies have the best weapons in terms of destructive power. Of course, wherever you make nuclear weapons, you need the ability to deliver them in multiple formats. In my article, I recommended that America and its allies need to control the seas and outer space. Because of cost and the new axis of evil around the globe, we need reliable allies such as England, Japan, Israel, Argentina, Italy, and Australia that will provide resources and geographic diversity. Obviously, we need to have the latest defensive technology, like some form of the Iron Dome that is protecting Israel. The objective is not to have a nuclear war, but as proven in the first Cold War, time to ensure that the commies know that we will blow them off the face of the earth if they start something. The cliche from the first Cold War is assured mutual destruction, or AMD. That is exactly why the whack job running the CCP, has not tried to take Taiwan by force. In my book, I don't want AMD, I want them destroyed if they start something while the rational folks, Americans and our allies, survive. That's why we need to do better. Related to this, the recent reported deal between Xi and Trump on rare earth and soybeans is a short-term deal. First, the CCP has never kept a deal in their history. Second, the USA and its allies must be able to stand on their own. You can't be dependent on energy, arms, natural resources, or medical supplies from an enemy that wants to see you destroyed. It is that simple. No more America and its allies being suckers. Will there be some short-term costs? Sure, but well worth it. And speaking of the first Cold War, Arctic frost investigation reveals shades of the old USSR and the KGB. Arctic frost is a label for the incredible abuse of America's investigative and police resources for purely political purposes. Best I can tell, this is the worst political scandal ever in the history of the United States. The current investigation is being headed by GOP Senator Chuck Grassley. Jack Smith is the pivotal actor in this American disgrace. He was appointed by Merrick Garland as some type of attorney for the government, specifically to run something that would make the old KGB of the USSR proud. The cover story was that the Biden-Harris administration was mad because Trump and his supporters challenged the results of the 2020 election. I find this alone humorous, since Al Gore challenged the 2000 results and Hillary the 2016 results. So the cover story itself is ridiculous as a justification. We know these Republican senators had their mobile phone records analyzed in secret. Lindsey Graham, Bill Hagerty, Josh Hawley, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, Ron Johnson, Cynthia Lummis, Marsha Blackburn, along with Republican Representative Mike Kelly. I believe Ted Cruz was also scanned. I have personally reviewed the list of about 200 subpoenas that were obtained by Jack Smith. The judge who signed them should be investigated for possible impeachment. Most of the subpoenas ordered the phone companies and others not to tell these people that they were being investigated. This is inexcusable in America. The number of Americans in conservative organizations like Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA who had their privacy invaded was about 400. Arctic frost was even used to pull financial records of conservative groups and individuals. This was naked political harassment a la the old KGB. Like many other Americans, conservative or not, a full investigation and then, as appropriate, prosecution must take place soon. Many of the underlings are still employed by the taxpayers, even though the head dogs are gone. Correcting and punishing the wrongdoers must happen now. Many conservatives are worried that this is all bluster and that prosecutions will not follow. Time to get on the stick. More tax on federal agents doing America's work. As an American who values law and order in my neighborhood, I want criminals rounded up and prosecuted. That makes our streets safer and probably lowers our insurance rates. The terrorists, robbers, rapists, and murderers must be removed from our communities before more of us fall victim. They have little to lose, and in many jurisdictions, they're often arrested and released by so-called Soros prosecutors. I work 7 days a week. Why would I waste my time standing outside a facility where ICE agents were arresting criminals? I like to hear about it as each arrest makes America safer. What I do not want to hear is that criminals disguised as political protesters are trying to interfere and in some cases hurt or kill these law enforcement officers. Across America, in Democrat-controlled cities, there are allegations that crowd members have violently attacked Homeland Security, ICE, and other agents doing their job. The people arrested and detained have significant records, including drunk driving with injuries. Enough is enough. This is referred to as an 80-20 issue. 80% of Americans want safety and security. They do not want to have their family shattered by rape, murder, or death, and of course, injury due to drunk driving. This pairs with the recently visible scandal of sanctuary states giving CDLs, commercial driver's licenses, without qualifications or requirement that the person speak English. I am pleased to see the feds are cracking down on the improper issuance of CDLs across the country. A surprising report is from Indiana, where 223 people were arrested in a sting operation, and more than 140 of them were illegals driving trucks. Speaking as an attorney, I'm trying to figure out why any business would allow someone not fully qualified to drive one of their vehicles. The legal liability from this is enormous. I see ads on TV from plaintiff attorneys looking to sue on behalf of people injured in truck accidents. Why would the companies want to increase their liability? Department of Justice is probing BLM for fraud. Several years back, I heard a report that the leader of the BLM movement put family on the payroll and had a mansion paid for from BLM funds. Of course, that was during the Biden-Harris administration. There was no real investigation. I've heard that this bogus movement took in about $100 million. Well, those who sent money in deserve to have it wasted, in my humble opinion. The Justice Department is finally doing a fraud investigation of BLM. Way too late, in my opinion, but glad it is happening. The Dems and free money. As a taxpayer and patriotic American, I'm offended at the giveaways of my hard-earned money to illegals, fraudsters, and folks too lazy to go to work. For the few of you listening who disagree with this, don't get too excited. Obviously, those who are disabled through no fault of their own or do not make enough money to cover basic food and health care need to be protected. That is the wonderful part about America. My point is we are giving away a great deal more than that, and it needs to stop now. I note that with government shutdown, it was revealed that 40 million Americans get SNAP benefits. Sorry, folks, I do not believe that number should be anywhere near that high. I strongly suspect that many of the illegals led in by the Biden-Harris administration and their cronies did this on purpose. This is basic vote buying, an age-old Dem strategy. For years, I've been the voice calling for dramatic reduction in what the federal government does. Now is that time. SNAP and Medicaid should both be dropped by the feds. Have each state take care of its own. We taxpayers pay the federal government for Social Security and Medicare, and that should continue to be done by the feds. Everything else handled by the states. For instance, I saw a report from the Center for Immigration Studies that 47% of non-citizen households with children under 6 use SNAP and WIC, Women and Children Benefits, versus 31% of American citizen households. The first number should be 0, and the second number should be at least half that. An unpleasant note, Ford sets a record on recalls. American car company Ford has announced recalls of over 400,000 vehicles since the first of this year. While admittedly some of the recall repairs are minor, it is not a good sign. I note that I've in the past had 2 Fords, both a 1966 Mustang and the 1985 Mercury Sable were lousy in terms of mechanical reliability and design. At least the Mustang was fun to drive as long as you did not need the brakes to work. So if you're driving a late model Ford, go online and check to see if your vehicle is on the list. If so, check with your nearest dealer to get it fixed. Some recalls that are fairly recent may not be ready to repair yet. New study says hot drinks before bed could be healthy. I found the results of a newly released study that was done by San Diego State University and a couple of other schools. The study compared hot and cold drinks before bedtime to see how it impacted sleep, mood, and yes, flatulence. Hey folks, I just report this stuff. The study results are for white and Asian participants. The explanation of this focus that there were not enough black and Hispanic participants for statistical conclusions. The study looked at anxiety, insomnia, and gut discomfort. This was part of SDSU's Healthy Aging Survey, which investigates novel risk factors and health disparities across the U.S. population. Other schools participating were Wake Forest University and the University of California at San Diego. So perhaps give that warm beverage before dinner and before bedtime another look. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.